Thank you and a very good afternoon to all of you. I'm sure all the speakers who have come here to address you all must have congratulated you at the outset, because it certainly is a great honor for all of us for having got this opportunity to be serving in the highest temple of democracy. So congratulations, and I'm sure that you will have a very, very fruitful 6 years and even more. So at the outset, let me thank the Secretariat, especially Secretary General Modi ji, for having, and his team for having organized this orientation program. From my own experience, when we step into the Parliament, there are so many questions all around us. How do we address? How do we perform? How do we meet the aspirations of our electorate? There are so many questions. And I'm sure that the 6 years are not enough to really understand. I was telling Modi ji just now that even if I'm here 10 years, I still feel there are so many things I still have to learn, and I still don't know. So such orientation programs certainly give you a window to understand things better and maybe perform better. As they say, we have a saying in Marathi, ki पाण्यात टाकलं की पोहायला शिकतो. म्हणजे as soon as you're thrown in the water, you learn how to move your hands and legs. I'm sure in your own language also you may be having such a saying. It is true, but if you're better equipped, you can swim faster and reach the shores. So I'm sure these orientation programs are exactly trying to do this, that it's going to equip you to learn better. I have been given a subject on committee system in the Rajya Sabha. And this certainly is a very, very important platform for all of us members of Parliament to learn and perform. We all know that we have 4 main responsibilities as a parliamentarian. One is to legislate, that is to make laws, कानून बनाना है. Second is to deliberate. Whichever issue comes before us, we have to raise the issue, study it, talk about it, and try to make our own point. The third is represent our people. Their views, their aspirations have to come out in the House so that they feel that they are represented. And the fourth is oversee the revenues and expenditure proposed by the governments through various means. So these are mainly the 4 responsibilities that we have. We have realized that, I'm sure in the these few days that you have seen the House, and after your oath taking, you must have realized that there is a 0 hour. Unfortunately, it was not taken up. There is a question hour. Unfortunately, it has not happened. Only a few times, but in a lot of pandemonium. But I think Modi ji also just spoke about 0 hour and how you must avail of all that. There are special mentions, there are calling attentions, there are short duration discussions, government bills on which we are supposed to speak. Government bills, unfortunately, we realize when we start speaking that the time allotted to us is too short. You come to realize that bill has 2 hours, and in the 2 hours it is proportionate to the number of parliamentarians in that particular house. So the big parties do get a lot of time. Small parties hardly get 2 or 3 minutes. I belong to a party which has only 4 MPs in the House. Unfortunately, we come in the others category, and therefore when we divide our time in the others category, it's unfortunately just 3 minutes. I always tell my colleagues, you know, when we are in the Parliament here and studying for the legislations, for the bills, they ask me, why do you spend so much time there? I say, speaking for half an hour is easy, but speaking for 3 minutes and putting all your points in those 3 minutes is very, very difficult, because you want to cover all the points in the 3 minutes, but unfortunately you realize that you have very, very little time. So that's the deal with private, for the government bills. Same thing with private members' bills, but not so much, resolutions and others. So these are all the parliamentary interventions which you realize that you are able to voice the concern of the people, but you don't have as much time as you would like to. And therefore, realizing this even earlier, way back, 35 years back, the government did realize this, the Parliament did realize this, that we are not getting enough time to make our presentations. There are some very complex issues, like say a surrogacy bill comes in, say an anti-doping bill comes in, so when these bills are come before us, we are not experts. And therefore, because we are not experts, obviously we want to have a dialogue with people. We want to discuss these issues threadbare. And it cannot happen on the platform of the Rajya Sabha. We cannot do it because we only make our speeches and that's over. So therefore, it was required that there is a committee system in which these issues can be discussed threadbare. We can ask questions to witnesses, we can summon witnesses, if need be, we can visit some places. I remember I was in a select committee for the surrogacy bill. Now, we did not know whether the surrogate mothers were really being exploited or what was happening. Were they being forced to become surrogate mothers? Were they being looked after? Were there proper clinics where their health care was taken care of? Where did these surrogate mothers come from? Were they being paid properly or not? These were questions which hounded our minds, and we really did not know how to deal with this. But it was our chairman of the select committee, Mr. Bhupendra Yadav, who took us to various places. We interviewed people, we interviewed witnesses, and we came to know what was the actual gamut of the entire problem. And therefore, we were able to make proper decisions and give a proper report. So there are several such issues on which we are not experts, but getting the inputs from experts, we are able to consider what is actually the need and what needs to go in that report. Another thing that we realized that we have to streamline the working of the houses. You see, there are assurances given, there are papers being laid, there are questions being asked. So this entire thing needs to be properly streamlined. And therefore, again, there are committees which handle the streamlining of the working. So there are several committees, and therefore I have put up a PowerPoint presentation because otherwise it is very difficult to understand. Some of the committees are of permanent nature, which we will come to. The department-related parliamentary standing committees are more or less of the permanent nature. The standing committees are of permanent nature, but some are ad hoc committees. They are only meant for that particular subject. A select committee is only meant for that particular subject, and that we will see in the next slides. So these are the various committees, a broad outline of these committees. On the left, you can see the ad hoc committees. These are, as I said, appointed from time to time. This comes into being on a specific motion, either moved by the minister in charge or by members. Members also can ask for ad hoc committees. Members can say, we want a select committee of these members, and can move a motion if there is an important bill which comes before us. And generally, the select committee or joint committees are these committees which are ad hoc committees. On the right, what you see are the one is standing committees of the House, which are 12 committees which are streamlining the working of the House. And the second is departmental related standing committees, which normally when a person asks you, which committee do you belong to or which committee are you a member of, this is the committee that they are referring to. Which department related standing committee are you a member of? So there are 24 such committees on various subjects. We will see what are these subjects, because I think none of you all have been allotted any committee as of now. The new committees will be constituted. And in these new committees, I'm sure you can ask your party to allot you a committee of your interest. And therefore, it's very important, very pertinent that you know which are the committees. So coming to the department-related standing committees, which just to give you a brief history, it's a very interesting history. That first time it was in 1989 when the 3 standing committees were formed. And it's interesting to note that there were 3 subjects on which these committees were formed. One was agriculture, because that's the backbone of Indian economy, rightly so. Second was science and technology, which also excited me and made me feel very proud that it was way back that our constitution makers, our lawmakers thought that science and technology was a field in which our country has to excel. And therefore, what we see today is really we have excelled in the field of science and technology. The scientists of our country have made us proud. We are almost equivalent to any major force, any big country, any developed country in the world. And therefore, the acumen that there should be a science and technology way back in 1989 existed. Environment and forest. This also is something very, very interesting for me, because when we talk about development, when we talk about a developing nation where industries and all other things have to be gotten, here was our government, here were our lawmakers who were talking about sustainable development, and this development must happen with balance with the environment and forests. So these were the three first committees. Then in 1993, these were reconstituted and 17 committees were made, in which 15 members came from the Rajya Sabha, 30 members came from the Lok Sabha. Naturally, they are double in numbers. In 2004, 7 more committees were added, but the numbers of members in the committees was decreased. So earlier, the Rajya Sabha had 15 members, now it became 10. Earlier, it was 30, now it became 21. So this is the present constitution of every committee. Every committee has 10 members from the Rajya Sabha and 21 members from the Lok Sabha. The number of departmental standing committees are 24, so as of today, the 7 and plus the 17, which were earlier. 8 of these committees, 8 of these 24 committees are under the jurisdiction of the Rajya Sabha. What does that mean? The chairman of the Rajya Sabha decides who the members of these committees would be. And these are normally in proportion with the proportion of number of MPs that are in the House. 16 of them are headed by the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. That means the chairman of these 16 committees are from the Lok Sabha. So earlier committee, 8 committees, chairman is from the Rajya Sabha, and 16 chairmans for these committees are from the Lok Sabha. I won't talk about the rules because obviously these are constituted under certain rules. What is the role of these committees? One is to aid and assist the legislature, and second is to monitor the functioning of the executive. When we talk about monitoring the functioning, normally there is a feeling that we will be playing an adversarial role. We have not to go at loggerheads with the administration. Here what is expected, and that is exactly what Mr. Shri K.R. Narayanan, the chairman of the Rajya Sabha, who inaugurated the committees in 1993, said, the main purpose of these committees is to ensure accountability of the government to Parliament through more detailed discussions, and the intention is not to weaken or criticize the administration. This is very important, but to strengthen it by investing with more meaningful parliamentary support. So it is not adversarial in nature, it is supportive in nature, and that is how we have to look at it. There is a very well-organized system of the committees. There are appointment of members, terms of office, functions. Meetings are independent of the Parliament meetings. So after we finish the session, between the session, you are called for these meetings to Delhi or somewhere else if at all the meeting happens there. They are held in closed doors. Everybody is told that you will not divulge what is discussed in this meeting, and the meeting will be from the part of the administration and for us very free and fair. So anybody feels anything about that particular subject can speak freely, not to worry about the political positioning. That is very important, because in the House you realize that you have a political stand which you have to take, and you tend to take a political stand and sometimes say something which you may not even be really believing in. But in the parliamentary committees, that is not so. And therefore, this provides a wonderful platform to have an informed and threadbare discussion. I have a very interesting quote which is from Woodrow Wilson, the 28th President of USA. We all know that in the US, the parliament is called the Congress. And he said, Congress in session is Congress on public exhibition, and Congress in its committees or committee rooms is Congress at work. So you might find a familiarity there, that when you are in the House, we are trying to, earn brownie points, but when you are in a committee and in the committee room, we are all at work, and it's all very serious discussion and very enriching discussion. So the committee entails, as I said, calling witnesses, visiting places, study tours to understand a lot of things which we normally would never ever get an opportunity to visit and see. So these are some of the most enriching, I feel, experiences as a parliamentarian being a member of committee and actually being able to talk with the stakeholders and even visiting places which are of great interest. As I said, which are the 8 department parliamentary standing committees which are under the jurisdiction of the chairman of the Rajya Sabha? Are these 8? Committee on Commerce, Committee on Health and Family Welfare, Home Affairs. The earlier HRD ministry, committee is now called Education, Women, Child, Youth and Sports, Committee on Industry, Committee on Personal, Public Grievance, Law and Justice, Science and Technology, Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and Committee on Transport, Tourism and Culture. So these are 8 committees which are under the ambit of the Rajya Sabha, the chairman of Rajya Sabha. These are the rest of the 16. I will not read them up, but I think it's quite visible. Now, even if they are under the jurisdiction of the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, we can be members of these committees, as you realize, because there are 10 members of the Rajya Sabha who are members of all these committees, just as 21 from the Lok Sabha. When we talk about department-related parliamentary standing committees, it is not a standalone committee. In the sense, Committee on Commerce talks about commerce and industries. Then you will say, what does the Committee on Industry do? So the 4th number you will see, Committee on Industry deals with heavy industries and public enterprise, micro, small and medium enterprise. It's very important to understand this for all new members, so that if you are, say, interested in MSMEs, then you choose Committee on Industry, not Committee on Commerce. So that's where the deliberations happen. Committee on Home Affairs, again, is of course Home Affairs and Development of Northeast Region. Say a member is from the Northeast Region or is concerned about the Northeast Region, then he can be a member of that committee so that he can do justice and understand what is happening there. Committee on Education, Women, Children, Youth and Sports, needless to say, all these aspects are covered. Committee on Science, Technology, Environment, Forest and Climate Change. I am a member of that committee and I find it very, very exciting, because it's not just science and technology, it is about space, it is about earth sciences. The number of organizations our country has really, really makes you feel proud when you go there and visit these departments. Atomic Energy, Environment, Forests and Climate Change. 6th is Committee on Transport, Tourism and Culture. Here again, civil aviation, road transport, shipping, culture and tourism. So these are the various committees that or the departments that are connected to those committees. I will not read out all these, but I will just flip through the slides for you to see. Committee on Finance, again, even if it is said just Committee on Finance, it is Finance, Corporate Affairs, Planning, Statistics and Program Implementation. So all this is included in that. When you say the 16th Committee on Labor, it is not just labor, but labor and employment, textiles. There are a lot of members who take a lot of interest in the manufacturing of textiles and handlooms. So that's the committee. Skill development. Skill development is another field which really attracts all of us, because we find a lot of unemployment in our country. And if we need to address that, we need to do something about skill development and entrepreneurship. So that is the committee. Though it says only Committee on Labor, these are the other departments that are included in that. And that is why I'm trying to elaborate on every subject, because maybe your party asks you, would you like to go in Committee on Labor, and you don't know that it also includes skill development and entrepreneurship. Probably you'll say no, and even if that is an exciting subject for you. So this is how it is. Again, Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Poverty Alleviation, Water Resources, takes care of even the Ganga Rejuvenation project, etc., etc. Committee on Social Justice and Empowerment, that again is a very important committee which takes care of not only social justice and empowerment, but tribal affairs. There are a lot of our members who come from that area and are concerned about tribal issues. This is the committee for them. Lot of members who are concerned about minority issues. But when you read that heading, probably you don't realize that this is the committee that I would be interested in. Basically, these are the 24 committees which I just mentioned. Now, what are the functions of these committees? What do you do in these committees? So in the committee, first is to consider the demand for grants. A demand for grants is mainly handling the budget of our country. Every year we have a budget session, and it happens in two legs. After the first leg, the committees meet and they prepare a demand for grants, which is given to them by the ministry, and a report is then presented in the second leg of the session. The second thing that the committees do is to examine bills. Bills are sent by the chairman of the committee of the House to these committees to be examined. Now, there have been several bills that have come for, you all must have, I don't know, we haven't really deliberated since you all have come, but a lot of times when a particular bill is discussed, you will hear, or you must have heard even on television earlier, that the members say, please send it to the committee. Now, which committee is this? It is this department-related standing parliamentary committee. Or they say, form a select committee. So, select committee is a special committee. Now, there are some bills which have already now are there for discussion before us. The Wildlife Protection Amendment Bill 2021. This was referred to the Science and Technology Committee way back in, not really way back, but on 25th December 2021. And the report was submitted in April this year, 22. The National Anti-Doping Bill, again referred to the Education, Women, Children, Youth and Sports in December 21, and report submitted in March. The Assisted Reproductive Technology Bill, which was passed as an act, has become an act now. So this was also passed, given for scrutinizing to the Health and Family Welfare Committee. I want to tell you this for the simple reason that when the Wildlife Protection Amendment Bill will come for discussion in our House, which will be slated, I think, in the next week or the week after that, and then we finish, of course, or maybe the next session. So when you are scrutinizing the bill, when you are studying the bill, it is very necessary that you look at the standing committee reports also which have been prepared, because that is where the discussions have happened threadbare. That is where the committee has seen what are the critics have to say about this. That is where the experts have given their inputs, and wherever there is a gap in the bill, in the provisions, that has been discussed, and that is recommended to the government. The government may accept the recommendations and come out with a new bill if it is going to be filed, but otherwise you have the standing committee report to fall back on to make your remarks and say what you wish to say on that particular point. So there are several of these bills which have gone to these committees for examination. So that was at serial number B. Then there are annual reports of the ministries and departments, which also can be scrutinized by this committee. And the last one is to consider national basic long-term policies, like the national education policy, for example. And such policies which have long-term implications are discussed in the committees and can be taken up later. The main purpose of the committee is therefore is to do an in-depth examination of functioning of the government and ensure accountability of the government to the parliament. So also when I say ensure accountability of government to the parliament, again I wish to say it is not an adversarial role. It is a role which has to go hand in hand, a supportive role, and therefore the rationale of the committee system, which is laid down in the books that we have, I think you all must have been given, is that it is influence but not direct control. It is advice but not a command. It is criticism but not obstruction. It is scrutiny, not initiative. You don't initiate something. You have to only scrutinize what is before you. And the last thing is accountability, not prior approval. So these are the rationales of the committee system which have been given to us. So these were the department-related parliamentary standing committees, of which all of you are going to be members of at least one of these committees. Then comes the standing committees of the House. These are to mainstream or streamline rather the working of the House. This can be divided into four categories. One is committees to inquire, committees to scrutinize and control, committees to advise, and the housekeeping committees. These are all to streamline the working. What are the committees to inquire? Committee on Petitions, which we will come later. In fact, after this, we will take each committee, what is its duty and what is it that we need to do in this. These are the number of members in each committee and who is the chairman at this given time. So coming to the first committee, Committee on Petitions. This is again an inherent right of every citizen which has been given by the Article 350 of the Constitution of India, that every citizen has a democratic right to seek redressal for any of the grievance he or she may have against the government or any public authority. Earlier, the Committee of Petitions was restricted only to the bills which are being discussed. But now it has been widened, and now the citizen can ask questions or raise or file a petition on any issue that they feel is of public importance. Of course, there are some provisos which we will not go into just now for paucity of time. That is, if there's a case pending in the court, it's sub judice, or it's a matter which is not related to central government, you take up a local government issue and start filing a petition, it won't do, it has to pertain, etc., etc. So this first committee, this committee was formed in 1952, and that is the scope of the committee. Then coming to the Committee on Privileges, you have an entire lecture of 45 minutes by Dr. Singhvi on this tomorrow. Therefore, I will not go into the details, but I will just like to point that these are peculiar rights that every individual MP, and as a collective form of MPs that we have, and we have these certain rights and immunities which, if attacked or disregarded, results in breach of privilege and is punishable under the laws of the Parliament. Now here, Parliament, that is all of us, becoming the prosecuting and the adjudicating authority. That is something that is, makes us very privileged. Committee on Ethics, again, this is a self-regulatory mechanism. This is something that we have to realize, that we have to maintain sanctity in the House, and therefore these rules of ethics are constantly changed from time to time. This is a record keeper and oversees that every member does not breach whatever is are the ethics of the House. Coming to the Committee on Government Assurances, you must have realized in the question hour or 0 hour or several times even during discussions on, say, any of the instruments that we have. Normally, a minister may say, I will provide you the information, or yes, I will do this as fast as I can. Now, this is an assurance given not only to the member, but an assurance given in the House. Who will monitor this? Who will make sure that, yes, the minister has said such and such a thing, but is it really happening? Has it happened? So there is a special committee of assurance for this. Every assurance is listed, whether it's given to a member or to the House, and then the implementation is ensured within reasonable time. Committee on Subordinate Legislation is an important committee again. We all make laws. Bills are converted into laws after it gets the President's assent, the signature. But law is not a law alone. That bill, when it becomes law or an act, is not alone. It comes with rules, it comes with regulations, it comes with several other things, bylaws, schemes, orders. Who makes them? We don't do it. It is the executive which does that. But that again has to be laid on the table for us to understand that this subordinate legislation has been made. The committee keeps a check whether the subordinate legislations, that is the rules, bylaws, etc., are being adhered to. If there is something that needs to be changed, amended, that is also something that the committee recommends, and therefore all the rules are scrutinized by this committee and even seen whether they are being implemented properly. Committee on Papers laid on the table. When we start our business every day, what do we see? Members and the ministers lay the papers on the table. There are some annual reports which have to be laid on the table. There are some papers which have to be laid on the table. They are laid on the table. But let me ask you, how many of us are going to read it? We don't read it. Somebody has to read it, and somebody has to make sure that what has been laid is in proper format. So this is exactly what the Committee on Papers laid on the table does. It verifies whether it is in consonance with what they are supposed to do, and whether it is it is in reasonable time, and if it is not, then the concerned authority is told to do it in time the next time, and whether they are both in English and Hindi. Business Advisory Committee, you hear this that did the Business Advisory Committee happen and what was decided? So what happens in a Business Advisory Committee? Basically, it meets on the first day of the session. What does it do? It decides the plan for the entire week or the session itself, which are the bills which are going to be taken up, how many hours are going to be allotted for it. This is what is decided in the Business Advisory Committee. The time allotment, the selection of ministries and departments, even during the budget sessions when we have to speak on a particular ministry, that is what is decided. And then, of course, if there is a proposal of a late sitting in the House or dispensing with the question hour or lunch hour, fixing additional sittings, all this is decided by the Business Advisory Committee, of which the chairman is the main person who heads this committee. Committee on Rules, everything works on rules in the Parliament. And these rules have to be amended and improvised from time to time. This is what the Committee on Rules does. And this ensures that the rules are streamlined and ensures smooth working of the House. House Committee, you get a house, you get amenities. This is also has to be controlled by somebody. So there's a House Committee which looks into all aspects relating to allotment of your residential accommodation and other facilities that you are entitled to. This committee was earlier called Committee on Provision of Computer Equipment to Members of the Rajya Sabha, but lately the nomenclature has changed. It is now Committee on Information and Communication Technology Management in the Rajya Sabha. The Parliament and the Rajya Sabha obviously encourages us to use technology to the hilt, and therefore delivery of information and services so that we efficiently and quickly understand, inexpensively get to adopt the measures which are supposed to. So this is the committee which helps us in that direction. The functions and what it provides has been written down, but I think in the course of time you will know, and even tomorrow there's a special lecture kept for that. Committees on MPLADS, we all are allotted 5 crores in which we recommend works of developmental nature. We all know that. So this is the committee which handles the MPLAD funds. Sometimes there's a disaster in our country. There are floods, there's an earthquake, and there's disaster which happened. A lot of times we get a letter from the chairman saying that each one of us members have to allot that money for that certain cause, which we happily do because there is a lot of disaster and money is required to be put in. At such times, if a lot of MPs have contributed for that work, the monitoring of that work also happens through this committee, and this is the MPLAD committee, which is headed by the Deputy Chairman of the Rajya Sabha. General Purposes Committee is a wider representative character. Whatever is not covered in the other committees is covered by the General Purposes Committee, and therefore issues pertaining to procedural, ceremonial, or functional issues are also taken up by the General Purposes Committee. This is the committee which was formed the latest, that is on 1st July 2000. Earlier it was being conducted, but it did not have a place in the rule book, but now it has a place in the rule book. All the important people in the Rajya Sabha, that is the chairman, the deputy chairman, members of the panel of vice chairman, the chairman of parliamentary standing committees, leaders of recognized parties, groups in the Rajya Sabha, and such other members as may be nominated by the chairman form a part of this committee. And so this is all-pervasive committee which looks after these issues. Coming last to the ad hoc committees. As I said, ad hoc committees are formed on particular issues. I would like to show you a list of these ad hoc committees just for you to understand the kind of gamut that this committee addresses. It can go from an issue which is drafting of rules of procedure, to inquiry into conduct of a sitting member, to reconciliation between Nirankaris and Akalis way back in 1983. In 1988 and 1992, there was a joint parliamentary committee, an ad hoc committee, which dealt with the Bofors gun deal and the bank security scam respectively. Then it on a question asked by a member, so even a question can lead to a formation of an ad hoc committee. So, in a question asked by a member, there was an ad hoc committee which was formed to examine all aspects relating to procurement of railway wagons. Even recently, when I was a member, some 4 years back, a member, Vijala Satyanarayan, she asked a question on child pornography. It was a question, zero. But the chairman was very sensitive enough to form an ad hoc committee to examine the issue of child pornography, headed by Jairam Rameshji, and we came out with a report which looked into aspects and what needs to be done, which was recommendatory, obviously. Then the committees on cotton growers and functions of Waqf boards, advising on statues and portraits in the Parliament House, catering services, facilities. So you just look at the kind of gamut of different subjects that an ad hoc committee can be formed and issues can be looked after. These are some of the select and joint committees which have been formed. As I said, the surrogacy bill, Yadavji is here. We had a very, very interesting and enriching time when we visited, as I said earlier also, aap aaye iske pehle main bata chuki hu ki we had a wonderful experience visiting all the stakeholders for the surrogacy bill, and I think we came out with certain very, very good and concrete suggestions, and which we now can see in the Act. Payment and settlement systems, etc., etc. I'm not going to read out all this, but these are all the select and joint committees which have been formed in ad hoc committees. And last but not the least, again, financial committees of the Lok Sabha. These are of the Lok Sabha. And joint parliamentary committees where Rajya Sabha members are also members of. Which are these? Financial committees of the Lok Sabha are Committee on Public Accounts, Committee on Public Undertakings, but there are members from our house also which represent there. There are joint parliamentary committees on Committee on Welfare of Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes, Committee on Empowerment of Women, Committee on Office of Profit. You need to know this, or at least you need to know that such a committee exists in case you would be interested to represent your party in such a committee. The Library Committee, those of you who may be interested in visiting the library and being a permanent member there, or rather frequenting there, could take interest. There's a Committee on Food Management in Parliament House Complex also. So if your canteen is not giving you good food, even there is a committee where you can make your complaint. Committee on Installation of Portrait Statues of National Leaders and Parliamentarians in the Parliament House Complex. Security Matters, and Committee on Salaries, Allowances and Pensions for Members of the Parliament, which again you have a special session on. There are consultative committees which are not part of this, but are members nominated by the Minister of Parliamentary Affairs, and the minister in charge of that ministry is the chairman. So there is a consultative committee also on which one can become a member. So a member can become a member of, say, a department-related standing committee, can become a member of a consultative committee, and also a member of the streamlining or the standing committee, which I said. So these are the various committees. Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, the first chairman of the Rajya Sabha, had to say that Parliament is not only a legislative but a deliberative body. So far as its deliberative functions are concerned, it will be open to us to make very valuable contributions. So we are the ones who have to make those contributions, and it will depend on our work whether we justify or do not justify this two-chamber system, which is now an integral part of our constitution. A lot of times there is a debate, there are arguments, there are views where people ask this question, is the Rajya Sabha really required? And when this question comes up, I think if we have to prove that the Rajya Sabha is a house which contributes greatly and richly to the parliament of our country, then it is something that what Dr. Radhakrishnan has really told us. So thank you for giving me this opportunity, and my best wishes for 6 or more than 6 years that you would be here in the parliament. Thank you very much. there are any, Yadav ji has already come here, but if there is any question which, ji.
This is Sanjeev Arora from Punjab, madam. I have, first of all, you rightly said that you learn when you are thrown in a pool without any help. That's how I learned swimming. My friends threw me in a pool. So, very well said about that. Secondly, I would like to ask you on committees, what are the powers with committees? It's not clear. I mean, I know you said it's more of a consultative nature and all this, but like if you want to ask somebody some questions particular, you can call them or you have to go. How does it work? What are the powers with them to make sure that the report is good or whatever they submit is nice?
So basically, if a committee is, say, scrutinizing a particular bill, and you realize, now take for example the surrogacy bill itself, which Yadavji is also here. It was, as I said, it was a very interesting bill to understand what exactly goes through the mindsets of the surrogate mothers, the parents or the childless couple. What is their mindset? How are the clinics? Are they good enough to look after them? Now, sitting in Delhi, sitting in a conference room or committee room will not really bring us that picture out. So we actually went to Anand, we went to several other, Mumbai, to actually see these clinics. And that's where we realized that surrogacy bill cannot be taken in isolation for the passage to become an act. We will have to have the ART bill also. That means the clinics which run the IVFs, etc., they are not controlled by any act, and therefore it has to really give a proper impact. The two bills have to be merged together, or rather discussed together. So these are the new revelations that happen when you start really concentrating on a committee. For example, the child pornography committee that we had. So we call the Facebook people, we call the other social media organizations who would be able to tell us how it happens and how can we stop these websites and things like that. So here we are not experts to understand the subject, and therefore when you have a dialogue with these people, only then can you ask them questions and you become a student and they are kind of telling you. So this helps us to make a a decision that is judicious and well informed.
So I'm sorry, but I still didn't get the answer to my question.
Yes.
That, okay, you have to call somebody or you
So the administration does it. The administration does that job.
So
there is a joint secretary. There's a joint secretary for every committee, and the members, they are silent spectators. The committee discusses what are the issues, who are the that we want to discuss, who are the people who need to be summoned as witnesses. Even the ministries are summoned as witnesses to tell us what the government is doing in that behalf. And then, it's like the committee sits around and the witnesses sit in the middle, or say on that table, and each one makes a presentation of what they feel on a particular subject.
Now, this answers my question. And they are obligated to do so, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I had a photograph of the committee room, but I didn't put it in this presentation.
One last question. You said that every committee has 10 from Rajya Sabha and 21 from Lok Sabha. So that makes 31. Let us say there's a particular committee in which 15 members want to be from Rajya Sabha, but only 15 are from Lok Sabha. So do they make that adjustment or no? They will work with lesser number.
Yes, that normally will not happen, because the chairman of the Rajya Sabha decides who are the members who will be going there. Probably there will be more names than you can accommodate, but the chairman Rajya Sabha decides which member will be accommodated in that committee. But even before that, every party is asked for preferences of your members as to which committee you would like to take part. That is why I was very keen on showing you what are the different subjects and departments which are related also to because per se the committee doesn't reveal that these are also the issues which I would be interested in, like the skill development. I mean, I would be interested in knowing about skill development, entrepreneurship, but I will not know which committee do I choose. So it's the Committee on Labor which talks about it. So therefore, if you, when your party asks you for your preference, and you say want to work on the field of, in the ambit of, say, this subject, then you have to give your preference for that. And when the committee meets for the first time, the chairman will ask all the members to list out certain topics which we would like to take up in that particular year. So the topics are not taken up randomly. It's a very democratic process in which the administration also suggests some topics. At the same time, the members are also asked to suggest topics if they would like to, and then few topics are taken up whichever are which meet high consensus.
Okay. Thank you.
A quick one, I know it's quite late. You dwelt upon standing committees, then you dwelt upon in detail the House committees. But the consultative committees, maybe some reference or that, or we can talk some other time.
So, consultative committees do not come in the ambit of the Rajya Sabha, it's the parliamentary affair. But I wanted to refer to it so that you know that there is something called a consultative committee, and it is headed by the minister. It meets not as often as one would like it to, or for that matter, not as often as the department-related standing committees meet. It meets once in a while. But that is also very interesting because you come to know what are the schemes of the government which are in the pipeline. Like we have a meeting of the Urban Development Committee, the Consultative Committee on the 4th. And the topic for that is Amrut cities. So basically we will come to know from the administration as to what are the next steps being taken. Earlier one was also on smart cities. So what has been happening in smart cities, and how is it being, the issues being resolved?
Actually, this consultative committee is, excuse me, sir. Sir, this consultative committee is under the domain of particular ministry or department. So the nomination is being referred to Parliamentary Affairs Ministry. So it is not in our domain.
But we can become members of, we have to become members of that.
Okay.
Therefore, I referred to it, though it's a...
Thank you very much, ma'am, for that
Thank you.
informative thing. And as a token of appreciation, I would request Secretary General to give a small memento.